Glue Wednesday. You see, it's my belief that we don't have to get over. We need to find ways to keep it together. And my glue is G.L.U.E. God's love undoes everything, because that's what keeps it together. That life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of each puzzle in your family, social, or business relationships. Yet, no matter what size puzzle piece you think you are, without you, the puzzle is labeled as incomplete. Hello, 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 and welcome to Glue Wednesday with Sporty King. I call it Glue Wednesday because so often we tend to hear of Wednesday as where people use the cliche, they say hump day, hump day, you know. Well, first of all, Wednesday is not necessarily everybody doesn't work Monday to Friday. So Wednesday's not necessarily the day that people need to hump. All right, and see, I think that I therefore think that hump has the connotation of the need to get over, when in fact Wednesday is the traditional middle of the week of a 7-day cycle, bringing the beginning of the week and the weekend together. So I see it as the glue rather than the hump. And so we don't need to get over, we need to keep it together. And how better to keep it together than to recognize that glue is G.L.U.E. God's love undoes everything. I always make sure I put the spiritual aspect in anything I do. I've been in my speaking business now 24 years. And I remember when I first started my business, I went to my pastor and I said, I have you can like schedule time to talk, so I had to schedule 30 minutes. And I sat down with him, I said, I'm having a challenge in my speaking business because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be a speaker or if I have the calling. Because I said there's such a fine line, and every time I speak it seems like I'm mentioning God or something to that effect. And I said, and the thing is, I don't want to have the calling because I'm not ready to give up sin. Well, he chuckled and he looked at me and he said, but should the preacher be the only one without sin? And when he said that, it took the weight off my shoulders. And so again, sometimes you have to do that. Just self-check, self-check and see what you're going through. And that was one of the glue factors in my life, was recognizing that God, even though I may have thought that I was losing it by not figuring out which side of the fence proverbial fence I wanted to be on, of being a speaker or having a calling to preach. That's not a big problem in a lot of people's lives. Say, wait, that's two good choices. But the fact of the matter is, the harder choices in our lives are when we have to choose from good and good, not from bad and good. It's an easy choice when you have to choose between good and evil. You want to go for good. So the tough choices in our lives do come when the choices are good and good. Because which one is going to get you where you need to go? Because we want to get there faster. Even though we all love that story that we learned in elementary school about the tortoise beating the hare because he was slow and steady. See, there's a whole lot of things in your life if you would just slow down and let them work for you. We've learned so much more than we need, but we've learned enough that we need, and we need to use it. So, today my topic is going to be conflict. Just as I had the conflicting feelings about whether or not I want to go to preaching or to be a motivational speaker, our broadcast is going to be about conflict. Now, I Googled the word and was surprised to find several dictionary authorities weren't completely in agreement on the definition for conflict. So in fact, what I'll do is introduce the summation of that from Wikipedia. And Wikipedia says there is no single universally accepted definition of conflict. One issue of contention is whether the conflict is a situation or a type of behavior. In fact, I'll be working, I said I'm going to be working with some background music this broadcast, but I can't name them yet because other than calling them next door, because they're not paying sponsorship dollars. They sound like a situation right now. So every now and then you hear that clapping? That doesn't mean that I have a live audience card in front telling people to applause. Here in our studio environment, we happen to be next door to someone else who's celebrating themselves. And you know why I bring it up? Because some might say, well, why would you even notice that? Why would you mention that? Because people are celebrating in your life all the time. There's always noise going on in your life. you have to, as I talk about this topic, conflict, part of the remedy, because I don't like to just bring up problems, I like to add some solution. Part of the remedy of dealing with conflict is knowing how to turn the noise off. Recognizing that what we do in our lives every single day is deal with some type of conflict, some type of noise that we may disagree with. Or even if it's something that we want to hear, we've got to shut something else to bring in what we want. Shut something else out to bring in what we want. So think about stuff like that as you go through my broadcasts, as well as you have any conversation with people during the day. Now here's Merriam-Webster's definition, which is the one that I've decided to use. And I think you'll already see that there is an option that is it a situation or is it a type of behavior? 4 different bullets on Merriam's definition. 1, conflict is a struggle for power, property, etc. 2, conflict is a disagreement between ideas, feelings, etc. 3, conflict is a difference that prevents agreement. And 4, conflict is a strong disagreement between people, groups, etc. that results in often angry arguments. And to these bullet points, I would like to add that it's often a search for differences rather than similarities. Conflict, is often a search, for differences rather than similarities. And offer some intentional, because I'd like to offer some intentional solutions or modes of action to avoid or mitigate conflicts, ultimately lasting effect. I'll first do this by introducing one of my examples of the power of words. And you can play along quickly. I want you to quickly play along with this game with me on camera. I call it audience shout out. And what you're going to do, I usually give 3 words to my audiences, and they have to give me their first reaction as they hear each of the words. So that's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you about a good hot 5-second pause for you to either jot down the word, because that's also a good way to debrief the experience, to jot it down. So get a crayon, and you can jot down the answer, or just say the first word, say it out loud, and especially if you're watching this broadcast with someone. I say it out loud so you can see if you both say the same word, or if you say conflicting words. See? So it all comes down, all right? So everybody got their crayon? And by the way, if you don't have a crayon, feel free to use a pen or pencil. But you can also type it in. And if you're watching the broadcast after we already played the game, try not to read other people's answers. Okay, or definitely try not to go fast forward and find out what I said, because there's some learning that can come along with this, all right? So here again, the instructions. I'm going to say the word. I want you to shout out the first word to come to your mind, or jot it down. And yes, I'm repeating the instructions. Here's why. Let this be a leadership literacy tip for you. We learn through repetition. Take your time and be sure you've clearly communicated your instructions or requests. So that's why you should repeat the instructions. A lot of times we don't. And if you're ever in a situation where you're in the speaking business, or you're speaking to a class or a career day or something like that, when someone asks you a question, repeat the question. Because maybe someone on the other side of the room didn't hear the question, as well as that's going to give you some time to think about and formulate your best answer. So we got a speaking tip for you too. I try to get you as many kinds of tips. We get literacy tips, biblical tips, and that's a professional tip for speaking. So repeat the question. It gives you time to think of your answer. And when you repeat the question, you will have 2 options. You can either parrot or paraphrase. Now, parroting, if you think about it, obviously you know that's a parrot, the animal, the bird. And a parrot says exactly what the other person said. Paraphrase, you would just take the words from the question that somebody asked, and you break it down into what you understood them to be asking, which is also a lot of times more helpful for the other people that didn't hear the question anyway, when you break it down into your words. And because if you get confirmation from the person who asked you the question that your breakdown is proper, then you'll feel more confident about your answer. And it is about your confidence as a speaker, that you're delivering the right message. So I think out of the 2 options, parroting or paraphrasing, I always go with paraphrasing. And unless it's like a simple question, like for parenting, where it's, what color does it come in? Okay, but if you can break it down into your words, because then you'll be more comfortable and confident that you're giving the right answer. And that confidence comes out in your answer. Okay? All that was a setup to give you a time to get ready to jot down your first thought. Okay? And you're only going to get one. I'm only going to give you one of the three words. I'm going to give you the first of the three words that I usually use in a live audience. So even as you enjoy it, consider bringing me in as a speaker and having a chance to play this game with the audience and see how much they enjoy it. Okay, here we go. So here's the word. Right. Okay, I gave you a hot 5 seconds to jot down what you wanted to do. My observation over the years allows me to bet that the majority of you, when I said right, you either wrote down or you shouted out the word wrong. Did you? That's like in the number one answer is, okay, the majority of people shout out wrong. And so what do you notice about that? You notice that you're shouting out what you consider the opposite. See, our vocabulary is usually on automatic pilot. And on automatic pilot, a lot of times our vocabulary is negative. So it's not a bad thing to say opposites, but when our opposites are also negative, that's where we tear our lives down. Because, as the Bible says, words are powerful. And the tongue is such a mighty weapon that it can tear you down. So if your words are negative and opposite, you pull people down. If they're opposite but positive, then there's a chance to pull people up. So let's look at that again. Before we go to that, as listed in one of my books called Starting Today, I call it Weekly Affirmations for Daily Living. And one of the principles I have in Starting Today is stating that, number one, so often we forget that the number one communication skill is listening. And your communication is broken down into three percentages. 55% of your communication is how you look, 38% is how you sound, the tone of your voice, and only 7% is are the words. So if we were to go back to the videotape, we see that what I said was right. And when I did that, that means right. So the opposite of right is left, not wrong. So you have to make sure you watch for people's body language, which will be a topic that I'm going to address in a future broadcast. But yeah, the opposite of right is left. And here's how I have it written in the book Starting Today. It says you don't have a right and wrong side. And everything you've done so far in your life has been right based on the information you had to make the decision. As we become comfortable with our decisions, we move forward more confidently toward our success. You're making the right moves. So start to recognize that and see that you continuously make the right moves. And I hope you don't think that I've forgotten that our topic is conflict. And our discovery was that its definitions are based on multiple angles. So the most common word used in all of the definitions was disagreement. And so now you can hear why I wanted to start out with that right versus left or right versus wrong, because disagreement is where we find the word wrong so well camped. Taking a word from three of the bullets mentioned above, and as you'll see on the slide with this broadcast, I've created a clause, and it's struggle prevents results. See, the first bullet, let me see what the first bullet said. The first bullet said, a struggle for power and property, etc. The second one said disagreement between ideas and feelings. The third one said a difference that prevents agreement. And the fourth one said strong disagreement between people, groups, etc. that results in angry argument. So I took three of those words from those bullets and created a clause, and that clause is struggle prevents results and leads to angry argument. So let's look at the word anger. Anger is a reactionary emotion. If I can get and keep you angry, I can control you. What I mean by a reactionary emotion is that usually we store up our disfavor with someone and then we plot to have a spontaneous interaction with them. Yep, that's conflict. We remember how or why they pissed us off, right? And so we see them coming and we decide to stick our foot out and hope they step on our foot. And then we figure that once they step on our foot, we can react to them stepping on our foot by hauling off and hitting them, right? So here they come, and we say, when they come, I'm going to haul off and hit them, and it looks like I'm defending myself because they stepped on my foot. So I'm like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they go right by and they don't step on our foot. And so we're upset because I got to get this person, and I don't want to look like I'm the one who started. I need them to have stepped on my foot. So now we step out a little further, and we figure we're gonna get them when they come back, right? So we done stuck our foot out a little further, and we say we're gonna give them the left hook this time. And here they come, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they don't step on our foot again. What happened? Coming, they controlled your mind because you were focused on them needing to do something for you to react. Coming back, they controlled your body. Because now you stuck your foot out and you readjusted who you were so that they can come into your space so that you can try to show who you were, your authentic self, which wasn't authentic at all. Mm-hmm. So if I can get you angry, I can control you. Coming and going, I controlled you. Coming, I controlled your mind. Going, I controlled your body. Angry, I control you. So that's why it's so important that we try to make sure that we keep ourselves from being angry or letting anger stay, because we're going to get angry about some stuff, but don't let it stay. The Bible says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Your anger can never make things right in God's sight. And that's James 1, 19 through 20, which then reaches back and connects to Exodus 24, 14. The Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. See, you can handle conflict through self-control. Put things in your daily diet of activity that bring you joy and ward off negative stress. I mentioned these Bible scriptures to give you another option of using your faith and peace of mind to find quiet time to reflect upon the very words that you use. Don't you say, oh, the battle is not mine, it's the Lord's. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Oh, I'm too blessed to be stressed. God's timing is perfect. We say all of those things, but are you using them? Those words are going into your spirit when you say them. I'm too blessed to be stressed. So why are you stressed out? The battle is not mine, it's the Lord. Then why are you being angry and worrying about this guy or woman stepping on your foot so you can haul off and hit them? The battle is not yours. Someone who has wronged you, in your opinion, the opposite of right is left, because maybe they left you alone to think about how you can let anger control you. Let you play the scene out in your mind that was actually, the Lord's Prayer says, thy will be done. So it was already preordained that this situation was going to happen between you two. Now you had the chance to live it out, and you chose to live it out with anger. I know it's a hard concept to deal with because it really is, it's easy to get there. It's hard to stay there. It's really, even I told you my not paid for audience, they like that too. They clapping on cue. You got to let that happen. But let's start to pull this message together by, again, looking at those 3 words that created the clause. Struggle prevents results. And recognizing that one of the ways we can decrease the conflict in our lives is by accepting the fact that the opposite of right really is left. And that everyone has a different way of looking at things. In other words, it's what I call wondering if you're on the 6 side of the 9 or the 9 side of the 6. The only way you'll be able to find out is to continuously look for your 5 and 10s. And your 5s are your first 5 rows of your life. Who are the important people in your life that are sitting in the 5 rows that make a difference to you and who you are? Don't let everybody be in your first 5 rows, and certainly be careful about who you let sit in that first row of your life. Because the truth is, when you ever say, oh, well, I know what you're going through. Bulletin, no, you don't. You have no idea what someone else is going through. You know that they're going through something, okay? And so you may not have been in their shoes, but you sat in their row. Because we all go through something. And who's to say who's going through something that's tougher than the other person? How someone else, everybody grieves differently. So how someone accepts or does not accept death might be less stressful to somebody who injures their arm. You know, you just don't know. Everybody has a different capacity. Hard to respect other people's capacity sometimes because we get so caught up in feeling disrespected because somebody else didn't understand what we were going through. It's a tough choice. So that's why I say it's easy to get there, hard to stay there. So the 5 is the first 5 rows. When you're looking for your 10s are your friends. And 10 is perfect. But we have to recognize that we don't have perfect friends. They're perfect for us. So as you look at who you're going to fill up your first 5 rows with, then you also have to consider who your friends are. And your friends just have to be perfect for you. And you need another perspective. And that's why you've got to look for your 5s and 10s. And more importantly, you need to honor it once you get that other perspective. So that's, again, why you're choosing your messengers carefully. Here's a poem about honoring that need. And I wrote this poem in 1999. It appears in my book, Your Name Came to Mind. And it's about how people have different opinions, and that's why you've got to be careful of what they feed into you. So it's called From My Limited Scope. Shall I call the psychic knot line, or have my palm blue? Or would it be better if I did all I can to find out about myself based on what I hear from you? You're the man who understands menstrual cramps, the winner who says you've never lost, the woman who forgot to wear an athletic support cup, the fresh out of college boss, the black who's never been right, the left that's never been right. You've always lived in the same place, never traveled or visited afar, never flown or taken a train, and you never have driven a car. Didn't marry, no kids, not a drink or drug have you taken, the son who's never been a daughter, yet you freely give out your advice and opinion with authority and act as if it's you that walked on water. Now, from where I sit, I cannot answer every question. In fact, there are times where I'll add to what is asked. For as similar as my experiences are, they're different. So understanding rather than answering becomes my task. Like many of my poems, the solution is in the last 4 lines. Now, from where I sit, I cannot answer every question. In fact, there are times where I'll add to what is asked. For as similar as my experiences are, they're different. So understanding rather than answering becomes my task. And what I want you to also focus on and look at, especially, is that line that says, in fact, there are times where I'll add to what is asked. So you have to continue to question yourself, even as you question others' motives, to get all you need for the solution, and in this case, to minimize conflict. So I may ask another question. I'll add to all the questions that have been asked. Even if this broadcast is I'm talking about conflict, I may still have to say, well, what do you mean by that? How can we change this? That's what I want to say about. That's how you get that. And speaking of questioning, I'm going to start the close out by stringing 2 poems together, as they are in my book, I Found Out I'm Dying. A celebration of life. It's a book about the fact that physically we're all dying from the day we're born. Get over it. One day you're not going to be here. And the doctor gives you 6 months to live. What do you say? Oh, well, let me get this on my things to do list. I need to go here. I need to see these people. Well, what doctor can actually give you 6 months? The fact of the matter is you found out, you've known you've been dying from the day you were born. So how about putting your list together now and start living it and sharing it with all those people? This poem, the first one, is I wrote it to a friend. A friend came to me to help him with a choice that he had to make. His marriage was falling apart. And looking inside himself, he saw the need to do a better job of listening. So I wrote him a poem called I Have to Listen. Attempting to block out the silence of my days without you, I listen to the roar of a motorcycle's engine. And I rebuke its ferocity, imagining instead the sound of your heartbeat against my temple. Attempting to block out the loneliness of my nights without you, I hear the scream of a distant siren. Instead, I listen to the rustle of the leaves, the footsteps of a spider. Ignoring the siren, I recreate the sound of your breathing in my arms. Suddenly, in the midst of imagination and recreation, I hear your cry for understanding and attention, and I am reminded of this sentence I serve without you. And I realize that I have to listen, because you have something to say. I need to listen, and I will. Now, did I serve his marriage? I'll never see credit for that outcome. But what's important is the self-realization. That will save you far more than a marriage, as you'll see after reading this second poem called, I Noticed You Weren't Wearing Any Underwear. Oh, there were plenty of other people in the room to talk to and plenty of things to look at. But your eyes held my attention. Well, not the whole time. There were times where you looked away and I thought about nibbling at your toes or your fingertips or your neck to get your attention. Sure, I even considered picking you up. But I noticed you weren't wearing any underwear. And I knew that you were oblivious to the breeze that kept blowing in the room. So I decided to join everyone else in the waiting game of when someone would come over and change your diaper. It's a baby on the table. And I use that poem to show that so often it is our perception of things that degrade or promote how we live and how we look at life. Sportyism number one, in the base of my business, sportyism number one, listen to the paragraph, not the sentence. Open your minds. When we allow people to finish what they're saying before we judge the content of what they're saying, we have a better chance of communicating effectively. So listen to the paragraph, not the sentence. And a huge part of communication is patience. Patience mitigates conflict. And for starters, be patient with yourself. And let's let that take us back for one more closing point from my shout-out game. The younger my audience is, do you know the more powerful the opposites are? When I say right, older audiences say wrong. When I say right with younger audiences, they say pencil, pen, paper. So, so you've got to recognize it. Is there some kind of study that says the older we get, the more negative our vocabulary gets? And I've said it to certain adults, and they say, well, we become more realistic. So in other words, realism is negativity. We have to really hear what we have to say, because we speak negativity into our encounters and interactions, and sometimes subconsciously try to catch people doing something wrong instead of trying to catch them doing something right, which is really the key. So extend that thought, even, consider that left is L-E-F-T. Let's encourage free thinking and recognize that we have to maintain our connection with individual creativity and gifts. Candace Counsels is one of the shows on the network with a show called Be True to You. And she encourages young listeners every week to embrace that individual creativity and gift. Now, we tape together on Monday nights, and she had me laughing during her tape and said that I'd come up and break down the word that she used because she was talking about diseases. She said, well, Sporty would probably break down disease. And so I have. First of all, we have to look at dis. Dis usually means what? It means against. So if it's dis-ease, it's against the ease and the calm that's going on in your life. And that's what a disease can do to disrupt where you're trying to go with your life. Then I decided to take it another way and recognize that dis is short for sometimes when we say that somebody disrespects you, so they dissed you. So if you dis-ease, if you disrespect the ease and the calm of what's going on in your life, you'll end up following somebody else. And they'll usually lead you down the wrong aisle. Okay, so recognize children do have to be taught the difference between right and wrong, but please go, find a way to encourage and empower them to remain creative thinkers so they can survive in this world that's ultimately based on facts. Conflict is not going to be a great survival tool for you. So you've got to find ways to minimize and mitigate it in your life. Please remember that life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of the puzzle in all your family, business, and social interactions. Yet no matter what size piece of the puzzle you think you are, without you, the puzzle is called incomplete. If you'd like to hire me to speak about this type of message or any of my positive messages about keeping powerful and positive when positive doesn't seem like an option, you can reach me at my website, sportyking.com. But you'll also see me here next Wednesday on the Wake Up Call Network for another episode of G.L.U.E Wednesday with Sporty King. Thank you, God bless you, and there's no conflict today. Ciao. Oh man, that was awesome. I'll make sure.